it's a two-way street. The audiences should also come forward and appreciate cinema which does not involve star kids.
So what was your cinema paradiso moment when you realized that this is what I want to do in life? I want to make films.
This was way back in college, and we had this module called Understanding Cinema, where we were shown this film called Bicycle Thieves. And I was not too much aware about world cinema. For me, the understanding of cinema was limited to Bollywood. And when I saw Bicycle Thieves, I was deeply, profoundly impacted. I was empathizing with the characters, and I found it amazing that, cinema can be like this as well, where socialist themes can become part of the narrative. And I deeply connected with these foreign characters who were not so far away from my land, but they felt like mine, And at that point of time, I felt that, I can make these kind of films and I can tell these kind of stories as well, because there is space for all kinds of cinema.
Do you have a genre that you think best describes your work?
I consider myself a very lazy filmmaker, because I do not like to cook up stories sitting in my office. I like to take stories, borrow stories from real life. I like to observe realities around me, of the common man, of their problems, because I feel like there is so much drama. I'm not chasing the extraordinary. I'm not chasing what is larger than life. I'm chasing what is real, what is happening around us, and that forms my cinema.
So why do you think these films are still doing well, especially with Kathal, right?
Yeah.
It was based on something so simplistic. How do you think it worked with the generation that we have as audience right now?
I think to begin with, humor really connects with an audience. The big reason why it worked and it managed to communicate what it wanted to communicate was its humor. And also the truth. I think the audiences relate with something which feels true to them.
What do you think is the fascination around these village stories that suddenly, are doing so well?
I think it's just representation, been lacking in terms of telling stories of small town Indian life, something that we used to do previously in our cinema. We have a great legacy of films coming from small town India. Satyajit Ray, you look at Naya Daur, you look at Mother India. And I think now with the advent of OTT, there is space for filmmakers coming from these small towns as well, where they are telling stories which are deeply personal to them. These stories are also a reflection of our reality, I feel. Like they are a reflection of India of today. And how can we just look at India from one lens? India is so diverse. It is so full of cultures and identities. I think the more the merrier.
So how did you zero down on the subject of Kathal, that, okay, this is what I want to make a film on?
Actually, to be very honest, I had written the story of Kathal way back, almost a decade ago. When this incident actually happened. I was just out of college, and I'll be honest with it, I had written the story with a male protagonist in mind. And a decade passed and I was doing a lot of different things. I was also working on another web series which didn't work out. But then I came back to this and I realized that I need to do more with it, with the story. So I went for a research. I realized that I can do much more with it in the sense that I can change the protagonist, I can see it from a female gaze. So I wanted to juxtapose the two ideas of the missing Kathals and the missing girls. When I went for the research, I realized that crimes against women are better solved or better tackled by female police officers. They look at it with a lot more empathy. I thought that here are the real heroes and they are the lady police officers. And when I listened to their stories, I thought that this story needs to be told from their gaze, from their perspective. And that would make a lot more sense.
Did you have people within the industry or outside who were your voice of reason, who were your support? Because you are somebody who is a new director to begin with, and especially not with a background that has previously been doing films for generations.
It takes a village to make a film. There are so many people who have supported the film, but if I were to point out, I would say my producer Guneet Monga. The moment I shared the idea with her, it's her excitement, it's her energy which is infectious. And from the day one, she got so excited with the idea. She was so curious to know more, to invest more into the subject. And she maintained that interest throughout the 3 years, because 3 years is a long time.
This is a subject that is too non-urban. I want to target the Gen Z audience. I want to target a certain class of audience. You didn't feel that FOMO?
No, I think the subject is universal in the way that it entertains, it is funny, it is something that is captivating. For me, that really matters. A film should be captivating. It should hold the audience's attention. Like, I don't want to be in a denial and be on a high horse and saying that I'm a filmmaker and, I'm bigger than others. Because the truth is that today we are competing with a generation which is creating reels on Instagram. And if my audience is liking that more, and if they're flipping my film and watching those reels, who am I to say and blame them for doing that? Because my film is not being able to capture their attention.
Yeah.
So for that matter, the filmmaking has to be really cutting edge. It has to really hold the audience's attention, and there is no room for any kind of lackadaisical approach with that.
So, what was your point that you think people held on and gave you that attention, which was more than 60 seconds? Because for this generation, it's difficult.
Yeah, I think the vividness of the film. I think the film has interesting characters. It has colorful characters. It does not take the audience's time for granted. And it takes them to a world which is unknown, which is unseen to them. It talks about something which is not being talked about. It talks about an India which has been long forgotten, I feel. It talks in a language and a tone that is very easy to understand. People have told me that, this is one of those rare films that I saw with my family at home. And it's a privilege nowadays.
Who are some of the directors, especially the younger ones, whose work you're inspired by?
I'm deeply inspired by the cinema of Chaitanya Tamhane. He's a hero. I've been following his films since a decade now. I'm also deeply inspired by the absurdist cinema of this Marathi filmmaker called Umesh Kulkarni. He's made some fantastic socialist films which are so absurd in nature, which talk about incidences that are also so bizarre. But he has a very sensitive eye of Indian life.
What was the last film that you saw that ticked all the boxes for you?
I saw this Finnish film called Fallen Leaves. And I loved the film. The humor was very dry, very satirical, and it was a socialist drama at the core of it. And I was amazed by the way it was treated and the way the director handled the nuances, and it really got me excited.
Nepotism has been a big buzzword in your industry for a long time. How do you stay clear of that? How do you ensure that enough representation is given to your characters in the film, especially at the casting space?
The topic of nepotism is so nuanced. There are so many different ways of looking at it. Nepotism, firstly, is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of limelight is on the film industry. I do agree that a lot of the nepo babies, as you call them, find a foot in the door, and the opportunity is easier for them. Also because they have an understanding of how the medium works, of how the industry works. And I've been privileged as well. My father is a film writer. And I have no shame in admitting that I have had that privilege of knowing how the industry works. But having said that, after that first chance, it's all about your hard work and your talent, and how you can take your privilege to the next level. And I do agree that we could do with more representation in terms of casting. But it's a two-way street. Films are an expensive medium, and the audiences should also come forward and appreciate cinema which does not involve big stars or star kids. The truth of the matter is that the audiences are fascinated by star kids.
As a new director, is there this underlying desire to take the audience back to the theatres, or are you happy doing OTT films?
The big screen is aspirational for any filmmaker. It will always be aspirational to be able to show your cinema to a room full of 200 people watching it, appreciating it, laughing together.
So what is in the pipeline for you now?
I'm working on the scripting of my next film. That is also a romantic satire.
As a young director, what direction would you like to see Indian cinema go in?
I would love for Indian cinema to have more representation to begin with. I think that is the need of the hour. Telling more diverse stories, stories with a female gaze, stories with the gaze of minorities, stories with the gaze of the marginalized. I think that is something that is really the need of the hour. New and diverse stories, because technically our cinema can match any cinema of the world. We have the best technicians and we can be proud of that.